soon as it hits 4 o'clock, I'm gonna get going. We have a couple of people. Hi guys, early. You're so prompt. I can't tell who you are though, so say hey in the comments if you want. Hey, Snow. All right, let's do this. Happy Friday. I am super excited to be here. There were so many good questions from the post in the group, and if you have any other questions throughout the rest of this live, go ahead and post them in the comments and I will try to keep up as best as possible. All right, so first thing is introduction for those of you who maybe do know me or those of you who don't. I started as a client with WAG and I wanted to improve performance and get stronger and fitter. At the time I was lifting a couple of hours a day and I knew that if I could really dial in my nutrition that I would probably feel a whole lot better and train a whole lot better. And I knew I would probably get stronger in the process and maybe be able to lift more, maybe be competitive. And then I also wanted to lose weight. So I accomplished both of those things and I continue to accomplish those things. And then I've been coaching since 2015. Before that, I coached CrossFit, Olympic lifting, group fitness. And so coaching has definitely been a familiar thing for me throughout my entire adult life. Currently, I live in Colorado. I'm originally from Minnesota, southern Minnesota. And I spend most of my time in Colorado skiing, both up and downhill, hiking, biking, and then finding new staple foods at Costco and Trader Joe's. And I'm a mom to a 6-pound Chihuahua. Her name is Illy Bean. And she goes almost everywhere with me. Even some of those places, sometimes when I'm doing casual biking, she'll go with me in the backpack, or hiking, she definitely loves to do that. She's a little outdoor bean too. I also wanted to give a shout out to all of my clients joining in today. Hey. And then any of those who I'm just meeting, hello to you too. Okay, so let's jump into the questions. The first question from the post, your best advice and tips for a newbie. So I have 3 things, and of course there are probably a million different things that, like little nuggets that could probably help a newbie, but I thought these 3 things would probably be the most important. The first is to plan ahead. I really like the quote, failing to plan is planning to fail. And when you're learning a new skill, I think planning is really helpful to kind of get a grasp on a new skill. So like anything, when you learn something new, you don't just like jump in blind, like you try to maybe be organized in what you're doing. So planning ahead. So this might include logging meals and food in advance. Either you can do this the night before. When I first started, I would log what I was gonna eat for the next day the night before. So if I was craving something or I really wanted to eat something, I would plan it in for the next day, and then I would build my day around that. So that's one option. Or you can always do it in the morning before you start eating. You can do go with the flow planning, but that gets a little more complicated when you don't quite know what you need to eat, or like, for example, what you need to hit protein. So that can be a little more risky, but if you plan the whole day either before you start eating, that can be super helpful. The other thing is you could plan one day and then just copy and paste. If you're one of those lucky people, I am not one of these people, but if you're one of these lucky people who can eat the same day, maybe the same foods a couple of days in a row, that's even better. So you could plan one day and then you could eat that for maybe like 3 days in a row, and then plan again and then eat it for another 3 days or 4 days or all week if you want to. That makes it super simple. So The first one was plan ahead. Second one is to log before eating. So a big part of this process is figuring out what is in food and what portions look like and how to build a balanced meal. And if you're just putting food into your mouth mindlessly and then you're logging later, you're not really getting that skill of what does the composition of this food look like, whether it's the macros, the nutrients, how much I need in a single portion, or what a portion or a serving even looks like for you. So logging before eating, that way you don't end up with an oops, I went over at the end of the day too. This can also be a lasting skill. So for example, with meals out, let's say or you're on vacation or you go to a wedding and there's cake or something, and that's not something typically we eat every single day. And so if we're logging before we eat, then we're creating an awareness about what we're eating and how much is gonna fit into our day. So second thing, logging before eating. And then the third thing is don't try to be perfect. I think we all mess up sometimes, or we overeat or we undereat, or we don't plan our day out the best, or something happens and it throws us off. And I think having an expectation of being perfect, especially when you're a newbie, is kind of setting yourself up for failure. So if we don't have that expectation and we think more in terms of trying to be consistent, or let's say, for example, we mess up our day. Let's say I ate a meal out earlier today and it threw my fats over for the day. And let's say I already had something planned for the rest of the day that had fats in it. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go in and I'm gonna try to adjust my logs as best as I can to try to meet my protein and my carbs, let's say. So going in and swapping out something that you've already planned and then trying to create damage control for the rest of the day. And then the other part of like perfectionism or the expectation of being perfect is when we think about it in a consistency manner, it's easier to start each day or each meal as it's new. It's a new day. Whatever happened yesterday, whether you overate or underate, doesn't have to come with you the next day. And you don't have to feel guilty about it because we're not trying to be perfect. We're just trying to learn about ourselves and create a consistency in a system that we can keep level and balanced. So 3 things: plan ahead, log before eating, and then don't try to be perfect. So those are my tips for a newbie. Next question, something that I have learned through WAG that has changed me the most, and then parentheses, in a good way. I had 2 things. The first was confidence. This is confidence in my self-care. Before, I always felt like I was just kind of eating aimlessly, like I didn't know what to eat or how much to eat, and I personally am generally an overeater, and so it really helped me to feel confident in the food or in the amounts of foods that I was choosing. And then it also gave me confidence in the way that I feel in my body and the way that I train. I often, from the introduction, the activities I do, I'm often training for several hours in a row. And so when you're training that much, you want to know that you're prepared to give 100% throughout the duration of that activity. Sometimes when it's a 20-minute workout, it's easier to not do that, but at the same time, when it's a long workout, you have the risk of feeling really depleted. So it really gave me confidence to know that I would be fueled and to actually be fueled for those long days. And then the other thing that it changed was the joy I felt in helping others to accomplish the same things that I wanted to, or that I did accomplish. I really, one of the reasons that I wanted to coach and started coaching is because I wanted everyone around me to feel the way I felt, to feel really good and to have that confidence that I gained from learning about my intake. The most life-changing kitchen gadget and meal prep tips. So the kitchen gadget, so I've heard that Instapots are crazy amazing, but I personally don't have one, so I can't vouch for that, but I've heard. But my personal favorite kitchen gadget is an air fryer. I would say a microwave, but that's pretty standard. But an air fryer has really upped my veggie game. I pretty much cook every veggie in my air fryer. And if you're not familiar with an air fryer, it's kind of like, it's more like roasting something to me. But yeah, it gives that crispy veggie, and I love doing like broccoli and potatoes and like pretty much anything in it. And then I like to do chicken in it too. So air fryer, amazing. The second part of that question was a meal prep tip. And I think my number one tip, well, maybe two tips. So the first one is learn how to multitask when you meal prep. So let's say I'm going to do something like a lean protein with a veggie on the side. Let's say potatoes with some fish. So usually the potatoes will take a little bit longer to roast, and so I will first I'll get the oven preheating. Then I'll grab all the things that I need and I'll start weighing out what I need or what I've planned. And then once it's preheated, I'll put the longest thing, the food that's going to take the longest in first. So then it kind of all spaces out evenly, and then I'm not like going back and forth. So learning to multitask is a really good tip. The second thing is prepping lean meats or protein sources in bulk. Right now, I'm currently obsessed with ground turkey with Old El Paso taco seasoning. So I make like taco meat, and then I put it over veggies, or it goes with pretty much anything. You can make salads, or you could even use some low carb or high fiber wraps, make like little burritos or tacos. So I've been doing that, and I will actually cook 2 pounds at once. And then I do the whole weighing before and then weighing after. And then as soon as it's done cooking, I let it cool off, and then I actually separate it out into containers immediately. That way, later in the week when I maybe don't have enough time, or I don't want to be trying to figure out how much I should eat, I can just grab it and then put it in the microwave and warm it up. So I think portioning out bulk prepping immediately after you cook it is life-changing, and it makes your whole week super simple. Next question. So actually I'm going to combine two together. There was one question about tricks to avoid emotional eating during times of stress, and then there was another one that asked about stress during a weight cut, and how it can impact weight loss. So I'm going to combine those two together. So first part of that question was what are your tips for trusting the process? So let's talk about trusting the process. I think we've all seen this in the group at one point or another, the phrase trusting the process. And I don't really love that phrase, because I think as coaches, we want you to question the process. If you have trouble trusting whatever your coach is recommending or suggesting that you do, I think we always want you to ask questions. So if something doesn't make sense to you, or you don't understand why things are a certain way, we don't want you to just trust the process. We want you to ask why we're doing things the way that we're doing. So if you feel like you're not, let's say, dropping enough weight on the scale per week, or you feel like it's stayed stagnant and weight loss is your main goal, and your coach didn't adjust your numbers, don't just trust that, trust the process. Maybe ask why there weren't adjustments. It's always okay to question versus just simply trusting. I think a better way to put that might be trust that your coach only wants to see you succeed. And the more that you communicate your needs, the more that we'll be able to explain, we'll be able to answer some of those things that maybe don't make sense or are giving you doubts about trusting the process, if that makes sense. So none of us want to keep secrets from you. I think everyone can say that. And we want to actually teach you how to make everlasting progress. So just simply trusting the process doesn't really help you to do that. Not all the time. And then everlasting progress might look different for everyone. If you truly feel like something isn't working for you and you've done this whole trusting, then bring it up with your coach. And at the same time, there's value in giving suggestions. There's value in like questioning what's going on. And then if you try one of the suggestions for like a week and it doesn't work for you, it's okay to say like, hey, this isn't working for me. Can we try something different? And then you can come up with different options to try another week. So let's go back to that stress. So the second part of that question. So the first one was tricks to avoid emotional eating during times of high stress. And then how weight can be impacted by stress. So stress, this could be like an entire live session by itself. So this is going to be kind of the short version. And I do believe that there is a stress live out there somewhere. But yeah, so short version is its impact on cortisol. A lot of times when we're stressed, we start to feel exhausted or low energy. Our cravings start to go up. We feel more inflamed, which can lead to the scale maybe staying more stagnant or even going up, or even making us want to overeat. All of these are a product of high cortisol. And then let's talk a little bit about cortisol. High cortisol can oftentimes lead to an increase in insulin and a drop in blood sugar. So then that leaves us craving those calorie-dense foods like salt and sugar. And then we're seeking that comfort in those comfort foods, because usually those are comfort foods. And we're trying to calm this like fight or flight response that we get. So getting that spike and then feeling that drop, and then we kind of want to calm that. So the other part of that is metabolism, So the other things that it can involve with stress is it can impact our metabolism, as we just talked about with the insulin and blood sugar. It impacts our cravings. It impacts our blood sugar, our fat storage. It can lead to the emotional eating, which is what the other question was talking about. It can cause lack of quality and quantity in sleep. And I think we all know after a brutal night of sleep, whether it was a short night or a rough night, we don't feel that great. And then sleep is a whole nother topic too, but sleep is where we get that chance to reset our hormones. Other things that can impact are lack of time for exercise, maybe time to sit down for a good meal, and prioritize our self-care. So all of those things can contribute to stress. So then going into the emotional eating side of that, I think we can all agree that eating to feel better might make us feel better for a moment, but then it usually makes us feel worse. So I have a couple of sides to this, because emotional eating, I think, can come from many different places. And so I think the first thing is to identify what it is that is stressing you, whether it's how your day is going, or maybe something that's happening in your life, or just maybe something that happens in your day. So how we approach it is going to be different depending on which one of those is happening. So just some general steps, I think, to stress, because I think stress is the root of where that emotional eating is coming from sometimes, or maybe some childhood things that happened to you. But let's bring it back to stress. So the first one is identifying what is stressing you. So I personally like to make a list of all the things stressing me, and then you can kind of see clearly where you need to tackle, because just emotionally eating to calm the stress isn't really going to be a productive action. So if we can see clearly what's stressing us out, then we can move to step 2 and we can identify an action plan. So maybe picking one of those things on our list. Let's say it's like an overall, we're always stressed, we always have a lot going on sort of deal. Then we can pick one of those things, and we can tackle one thing a day, or maybe do one step for one of those things a day. That way we're actually being productive in kind of leveling out our stress. And then the third step would be to put those actions into motion one by one. So actually weeding through what is actually stressing us out. And then I think it's like kind of like a cycle where when we have less stress, then we're going to be less emotional. Less stress, less emotional. So if we can just work through that stress, then it's all going to add up. So one other part of emotional eating, I know for me, when I've ever eaten emotionally, it's a lot of times been in the evening or at night. I think during the day, stress can add up, and then we come home and we're like, oh yes, I just want to sit back and eat some Cheetos on the couch or whatever, and just not think about anything. So nighttime, I think, is a really big time where all of this stress can just come together and then it just blows up. So we get to a point where we've had enough. So having a few things with this. So having foods as an alternate, like rather than eating Cheetos, maybe we have Quest chips. Quest chips are the protein chips, or there's like a few other protein chips out there. There's one with cricket powder. I'm trying to think of the name. Chirps. So having alternatives. Let's say you're a salty kind of person, so chip, that's an option. Or you have an option for something sweet. Let's say you have like a protein powder dessert that you like to make. Or the website, WAG website has a lot of really good ideas for alternative treats. So we're going home and then we're grabbing for something that maybe will help our macros versus something that is super calorie dense and just makes us feel bad if we overeat it. If it's late enough, you can always just go to bed. I think that's a great option. Just doing your nighttime routine and then just winding down and not even just skipping by the kitchen if you've eaten all your macros and just going right for bedtime. Another thing you can do, if it's too early to go to bed, you could always go for a walk. I know it's kind of difficult as the seasons change, or at least on my side of the world. Going for a walk and just decompressing. Sometimes rather than just like laying out on the couch, going for a walk can kind of release some of those endorphins and get you a little more energized and feeling a whole lot better. When I walk, I love to listen to podcasts. And it can be like something that you can listen to, something like music if you really enjoy music, or maybe listening to something that has nothing to do. Maybe it's just like a podcast for enjoyment. So that's one way, just to kind of decompress and get out of your head and not think about the stress of the day. You can always go to the gym instead. If you have a family and evenings are usually family time and you feel like you're building up all this stress and then you get home and you just don't want to talk to anybody, maybe having like organized play. So for example, like having like a board game that you like to play, or teaching your child how to play a card game. That can always be fun with the family, and then it kind of gets you more present and not thinking about the stressful day that you had. If you have a pet, so for example with Illy, I like to play fetch with her, or I could take her for a walk with me. And then that kind of gets that sense of play and the endorphins going too, and you're thinking about something other than stress. And then the other idea I had was doing yoga or meditation. There are a lot of online yoga programs out there. I've been doing yoga every morning to start my day. And then they have PM classes as well. And I use a website called Gaia, Gaia. And it has so many classes. There's like PM routines, there's meditation. There's also apps like Headspace and Calm if you want like a guided meditation. So even meditating and just kind of coming back to the present and letting go of all those stresses. Not only will this get you out of the kitchen or snacking. It'll also calm your mind down and relax you, and then set you up for a good night's sleep too. So that's for nighttime emotional eating. And then let's say stress happens during the day, and it's like you still have the rest of your day to go, or you just started your day, you're on the drive to work and somebody cuts you off and whatever, and you're already starting your day stressed. So we still have the whole day to go. So you can't just decompress or sit down and meditate. But in those moments, even just if you get like 2 minutes to just breathe and let go of some of those things that are stressing you out and just take it back. One breathing exercise I really like to do is breathing in for a count and then breathing out for the exact same count. And you can do this, you can set a timer if you want. And you can start with breathing in for 3 and then breathing out for 3, the count of 3, 1, 2, 3. And then doing it slowly, so like 1, 1,000, 2, 1,000, 3, 1,000. And then you can go all the way up to 8 if you wanted. And you would be really surprised what breathing and focusing on your belly, your chest, and then your throat, and then doing the same pattern in and out can really do for calming that stress down. So even when you get home from a long day, doing that like in the car, right away when you get home, right before bed, can really be super productive and kind of get you out of your own head and stressing out. Let's see. Oh, one more thing with the breathing. I always think that it allows me to think more clearly too. And then when we're more focused, I think we're more productive. And so if we can really keep on the straight and narrow versus just having all of these stressful thoughts all day long, I think really helps with the overall rise of stress. And then we can have a more productive day and actually sift through the things that are stressing us out. And then 2 more things with stress, temptations. I think oftentimes when we come home from a stressful day, we want to eat what feels good or like what's easy and quick to grab. So that's where it goes back to planning and prepping. If you have things already prepped out too, you can grab for those things. Or if you really want, let's say you really want a cookie or whatever, and you know you have cookies, I personally like to keep things like that in the freezer. That way you can't just like bite into it either because it's rock solid. But also it allows you to be more mindful about just grabbing. And then the other thing is to portion those sorts of things out into 1 serving portions. So you can put them in different drawers or whatever, or you can put them into like different baggies. Like let's go back to the Cheeto example. I don't know why I'm thinking of that today. Having Ziplocs, or I think they have reusable Ziplocs even too, where you can portion it out into serving sizes. So having it portioned out, or using the freezer as a tool, or just getting tempting foods that you know you're going to emotionally eat out of the house. And then the last thing is under eating. I think usually, or sometimes when we're stressed, we actually forget to eat, or we don't have an appetite. We have this pit in our stomach and we just don't feel like eating. I think in these moments, even though it doesn't feel intuitive, I think what you should do is you should still eat. So having those set meal times where you're staying on routine, whether your day is crazy or not, having either an alarm set or knowing that you're set lunchtime each day, knowing that you need to get in and get that meal, because that's going to help with your self-care, and it's going to go back to that being productive and remaining focused. I think if we're just letting our blood sugar drop and we're forgetting to eat and we're neglecting that need, that we're not going to be able to give our all to all those other needs that are all around us. So avoiding under eating. Not only if we avoid under eating and we stay on our routine, we're going to be less likely to give into those temptations or to get overly hungry. And then if we make the most out of those meals and we're eating lean protein, eating veggies, then we can build a solid meal that makes us feel good, and then we can complete the rest of our day or do a whole bunch until our next meal. All right, moving on. The next question was, I'm completely surrounded by people who eat whatever they want and have zero interest in being healthy. It's so hard to be social and not destroy my macros for the days, no matter how hard I try, because temptation is everywhere. I think we all know that temptation is everywhere. So a few things. So theoretically, remembering your why. So when you first start the program, there is that first message from your coach that makes you think about your non-negotiables and your why. So why are you here, and what are things that you're not willing to break that no matter what comes your way. So I think really dialing those things in is super important. So if you haven't thought about those things, I think that's step number one with non-negotiables. So I'll give an example. For me personally, when I go out and let's say I want to have, let's say after skiing, usually alcohol is après ski, that's like a thing. And so my non-negotiable is that I cannot have more than 2 drinks. After 2 drinks, I know that I'm not going to make a good choice, and I'm probably just going to start mindlessly eating or drinking. I'm not going to keep up with water, and yeah. So having non-negotiables are really going to help in those moments. Another non-negotiable I have is that I go to bed at 10 every night. So things like that are really going to help you stay focused in those times of temptation, or when you're around people who maybe don't have the same goals as you. This second thing is asking for support from those around you. So it's your boyfriend or your family members. Having support is so essential. For me personally, because I am an overeater, it's really easy for me to fall into that. And so I have asked my boyfriend to help me in those situations. And usually if we ask for help, those who care about us really want to help us. So this can mean helping them, communicating with you where they want to eat a meal out. So then you can take initiative and you can start planning at that restaurant. If you're able to plan, then you can not only eat some of the things that they're eating, but then you won't have that pressure and you'll still feel like you get to do what they're doing. I think the best thing that we can do is ask for support. The other thing you can do is suggest things to do or activities to do that aren't centered around food. I think so often, at least in the US, I don't know if you're from the US or not, but I think that a lot of places, our socializing time is centered around food. So if we can really take a new perspective and say, hey, let's go rock climbing, or let's go hiking, or let's go to the beach, and not have it just be a meal out, I think can be really powerful as well. And then examine the areas destroying your macros. So is it drinking too much? Is it your food choices when you are out? Is it the portion of your meals? Ultimately, we get the final say, and temptation isn't going to go away. I think everyone faces temptation, whether at least on a weekly basis, and it has to be our choice, and we have to say no, or I'm not going to do that. And changing habits is really hard. So if this is new for you and you find yourself going back to old habits every now and again, know that that's sometimes part of the process, and we can take away from those situations and we can learn how we react and how we respond. And then we can talk with our coach and say, this is what happened. Do you have any ideas for this specific situation? I'm noticing this is how I'm feeling, and I don't know how to approach this exact thing or whatever. Like, let's say I planned for 2 drinks and then they wanted me to have a 3rd drink. So maybe it looks like we have 1 vodka soda, and then we have just a soda water, and then we have another vodka soda on the other side of that after we've had a vodka soda. That way it looks like we had 3 drinks, but we only had 2, for example. And it could be a million different things. And I think bringing those specific situations each week at your check-in can really help you to fine-tune your skill and really figure out what is going to work for you. And then it lines up with your why and why you're here and what you want to accomplish. So having support, remembering why you're here, non-negotiables, and then examining those situations that are really difficult every single week. Final question, and then I'll check the comments. Aside from protein, what are other drinkable high protein ideas? This is a really hard question. And then the second part of that, how do you deal with midday hunger? And how do you manage to find meals that keep fat and everything else high? Fat down, everything else high. So the only other thing that I could think of for drinkable protein was to make a smoothie. Bone broth, that's another one. Adding collagen to your coffee. I've never done that, but I've heard a lot of people do that. Adding collagen to like sauces is another one. Yeah, if any of the rest of you have really good recipes, you should post them in the comments. Yeah, that was a really tough one because I generally don't like to drink my protein. So I have a smoothie recipe. If you are a Costco fan or you have a Costco membership, right now they have like little smoothie packets, and it's actually kale, spinach, and then a bunch of berries. And so I do that. I've been doing that, and then I'll do the Vega protein and greens, and then just a little bit of water, and I'll blend it up in the Vitamix, and it makes a really awesome smoothie. So that's one idea. Oh, and I add a banana to that too. So the other idea I had for protein, and I always recommend this, is just adding a little bit more to each meal. So let's say, and like spacing it out throughout your day, because I think it really sucks to get to the end of your day and then realize you have a ton of protein left. So just adding a little bit more to each meal can help you spread it out. So let's say your total, or we can take it a step further. Let's say your total protein for the day is 100 grams. And then you eat 4 meals a day. Well, that's what I do. So we're going to use 4 meals as an example. So you would take 100 grams, your protein total, and divide it by how many meals you're going to eat, 4. And then we get a goal for each meal of 25 grams. I think if we have specific goals that we're working towards, we can see our trends throughout the day, and then we can shift and maybe add a little bit more for breakfast, or add a bit more for lunch or our snacks. So yeah, so evenly spacing it out. So maybe it doesn't mean more drinkable protein. Maybe it just means a little bit more chicken breast, or a little bit more of your eggs in the morning, or anything in the world. Midday hunger. So how do you deal with midday hunger? I think that this is kind of a twofold question, but most people experience a dip in the mid-afternoon. So having a meal planned for this time can really be helpful when hunger strikes. Or we get that like afternoon slump where we feel a little bit tired, and sometimes having a meal in there can kind of give us a boost to finish out our day, or a snack. And then making sure you've kept up with water all day. Usually if we've hit, let's say 2 p.m. for example, we've only had 1 liter of water, maybe thinking about the next day and having had 2 liters of water by that time. You would be really surprised how energizing water can be. And then not getting overly hungry between meals. So spreading them out evenly. Let's say you have breakfast at whatever, 6 a.m. and then you're not eating until noon, then it's kind of like this big swing in your sugar levels. So as soon as you eat lunch, you're gonna be on the down, and then you're gonna hit 2 p.m. and you're gonna be like, oh, I'm really tired. And then you're gonna want another meal again, or you're gonna be really hungry. So spreading meals out evenly. So maybe delaying breakfast a little bit to, let's say, when you get there at like 9 or whatever. And then your window between meals is a little bit smaller. Or we could do some intermittent fasting. Talk to your coaches about this. Delaying your first meal a little bit. Or at lunchtime, we could load up on those nutrient-dense foods and lean protein. So nutrient-dense foods, I mean like veggies, volume foods. That way it's going to take us into maybe our, let's say if we work out in the evening, it's going to take us to our snack or our pre-workout, and then carry us over to dinner. So loading up on lean protein and veggies at that middle of the day meal, or having that be our biggest meal so that we can have a little more fuel for that dip. Planning. So this is that last question. How to manage and find meals that keep fat down and everything else high. I think that this is a planning thing, and this is why that was one of my number one tips for a newbie. I think having a list of protein staples that you enjoy, and then you can pull that, or then you can plan your whole day out. So for me personally, I was gonna have my MyFitnessPal here and tell you how I plan my day, and I do not have it here. Let's see if I can bring it up really quick. So I'll actually plan all of my protein out first in my day, and then I can fill in the gaps from there. So I have my list of high protein or lean protein sources, and then I'll go, after that I'll add in carbs, and then whatever I have left for fats, I'll add in things like avocado or nuts and seeds or oils for cooking. I am a big fan of the spray oil. I'll put it on the scale first, spray, weigh it after, find the difference, and that's what I log. And then usually from there it's pretty well balanced. You might have to do a little fine tuning in the protein and the carbs after you hit the fats, but usually it hits pretty spot on. All right, so I brought up my MyFitnessPal. Let's see if I can do a share screen. I don't know if I can. All right, well, I'll just name it off for you. So for breakfast yesterday, and this is gonna sound super weird, but don't judge me. Yesterday I had tilapia for breakfast. For lunch, I did 3 ounces of skinless rotisserie chicken. Dinner, I did 8 ounces of ground turkey, my taco turkey. And then for snacks, I had Greek yogurt, and that hits all of my protein. So then from there, I can go through each meal, and then I start adding in my veggies. I love to add veggies first because I don't know if you saw my post the other day, but I've been playing this game where I hit as many colors as possible with my veggies. So after I get my protein, then I start going to my veggies. And so then for breakfast yesterday with my tilapia, I had broccoli, which is super high in protein. I eat a lot of broccoli. So for 450 grams of broccoli, don't judge, I had 16 grams of protein and 21 grams of carbs, no fats. So that's a huge protein boost. So that's why I say, like, try to hit like 2/3 or 3/4 of your protein through your lean protein staples. And then if you fill in with veggies for those carbs, you're probably going to make up the difference. So I had broccoli, and then I had some root vegetables, like a combo of root vegetables. And then lunch, I added in my potatoes. I wanted some ketchup with my potatoes, so I added in ketchup. And then for dinner, I did some cabbage and some salsa. And then for snack, I did an apple and some sweet potato chips. And then from there, I actually added in the sweet potato chips because I was really low on fat. I needed a ton of fat. And so I like something salty sometimes. And so chips are my go-to when I need a lot of fat. And so I had those yesterday. And then from there, I added in some oils here and there. And then I added a little bit of dressing to my taco salad. Yeah, and then that hit my day. So, okay, let's go through comments. Ginger does collagen in her coffee. That's a drinkable. There we go. Yes. I am not seeing any other questions. Am I missing any? It's quite possible. Let me see if I can bring up another page, just to be sure. While I look, thank you everyone for joining. So great to see you all with your little waves. If you know me, I don't love to talk to a camera, so this is always a stressful time for me. When I was thinking about the stress comments, or the stress questions, I was thinking about the under eating because I totally did that today. And I was like, why am I so hungry? Oh, because I haven't eaten for a couple hours. Okay, I'm not seeing any questions. So thank you so much. If you have questions, comment, and I'll try to answer them. Have a good night.